Yes, welcome to the topic of uh, domain name system. In the domain name system basically works at the application layer, and uh, I mean it is in sync with the various other protocols also. Like let's say SMTP is having the domain, let's say some email with a person at the rate wonderful.com, let's say, right? And we actually not knowing what is the IP address of that. So what this system will do is SMTP client may put up a request to the DNS client, and this DNS client, if it is having the appropriate IP address, then it will send it to the SMTP client. If it is not having it, then it will make a request to the other DNS servers from where it can get the information, right? So in this way, it is going to get the somewhere the mapping from the source from the name to the corresponding IP address. However, see, there are certain protocols which are going to be useful at the application layer. There are many application protocols which are there, like HTTP, then for web services, then DNS for mapping the names to the IP addresses, then there is FTP for transferring the contents from your machine to the actual server, and SMTP for email communication, and POP3 again for email communication. And these are the major things which will be required when you develop your website, right? So that's why we are interested to see what is the domain name service and the system all about, right? So normally people prefer to use the names instead of addresses. Therefore, no, we need a system that can map a name to an address, or an address to a name. So in connection to this, no, we need that there has to be some namespace sort of thing which is going to be there, wherein all the naming convention will be present. So basically the names should be unique. That is what is basic requirement, because the addresses are unique, right? And the namespace that maps each that maps each address to a unique name can be organized into two ways. One is the flat namespace, and the other is the hierarchical namespace, right? So what is there in the flat namespace is like normally flat namespace is not used, but just to have the idea of what it is all about, is a name assigned to an address, and there is no such a name in this space is a sequence of characters, without any structure. And the names may or may not have a common section, and if they do, then it has no meaning, right? So the main disadvantage of the flat namespace is that it cannot be used in a large system such as the internet, and because no, it must be centrally controlled to avoid the ambiguity and the duplication, right? So next comes the usage of the hierarchical namespace. And hierarchical namespace is something like the first, no, it is divided into several parts. So in this, no, the first part can define a nature of the organization. The second part can define the name of the organization. And the third part can define the department in the organization, and so on. So the point is, it is like decentralized, and no, it becomes easier for us. So to go into the details of the domain namespace, no, to have the hierarchical namespace, the domain namespace was designed, and in this design, the names are defined in an inverted tree structure with a root at the top, right? So this is what is going to be there. The diagram would be something like this. So an inverted tree structure with a root at the top. The tree can have only 128 levels. So from the root, it can go up to 128 levels. And level 0 is the root, and it can then have bottom, it can go up to 127 levels at the bottom. So total 128 levels. So this root basically glues the whole tree together, and each level of the tree defines a hierarchical level, right? And within this, no, there will be labels which will be associated. So each node in the tree has a label. So if you see that ARPA, COM, EDU, these are all the labels, which is a string with a maximum of 63 characters, and the root label is a null string, right? The DNS requires that the children of a node have different labels which guarantee the uniqueness of the domain name. So there will be unique names which will be there. But however, no, at the leaf level, it could be having the same name at different domain levels at the top, right? So challenger, maybe let's say challenger.fhdu.edu, challenger.berkeley.edu, challenger.smart.com. This all these things could be possible. So leaf level, there could be a same name. Then next is domain name. So each node in the tree has a domain name. A full a full domain name is a sequence of labels separated by dots. So there is a domain name which is having which are going to be separated by the dots, and the domain names are always read from the node up to the root, right? So challenger.atc.fhda.edu dot, right? So the first the last label in the is the label of the root. Understand? This means that the full domain name always ends in a null label, and which means that the last character is a dot, because the null string is nothing, right? The figure this shows that some domain names. Now now we are interested to see what is fully qualified domain name and partially qualified domain name. So if a label is terminated by a null string, it is called a fully qualified domain name, right? And a fully qualified domain name, FQDN, is a domain name that contains the name, full name of a host, right? So with that, we'll be able to identify what the actual host is, and it contains all labels from the most specific to the most general. I mean, that uniquely defines the name of the host. For example, the domain name challenger.atc.fhdu.edu dot, right? So dot comes to the end, which is a root. So in the FQDN of a computer named what is this? It's a fully qualified domain name of a computer named Challenger, and installed on the Advanced Technology Center ATC at De Anza College. And a DNS server can only match an FQDN. Understand? DNS server can only match a fully qualified domain name to an address. Note that the name must end with the null label, right? So, but because the null here means nothing, the label ends here with a dot, right? And what is partially qualified domain name here is, if a label is not terminated by a null string, it is called a partially qualified domain name. So here, if you see, it is not having the dot at the end. So a partially qualified domain name starts from a node, and but it does not reach the root. So it is used when the name to be resolved belongs to the same site as the client, right? So if it is inside the client, same domain, then it is used. Here, the resolver can supply the missing part called the suffix to create the PQDN to FQDN, right? So for example, if the user at the fhda.edu site wants to get the IP address of the Challenger computer, he or she can define the partial name as Challenger, and then it will complete the remaining part, right? So the DNS client adds the suffix before passing the address to the DNS server, and DNS client normally holds a list of suffixes. So every DNS client will have a list of suffixes. The following, let's say the etc.fhda.edu, then fhda.edu, then null. So these suffixes will be selected and will be added when the user defines an FQDN. So in this way, things are going to be there, and what we come up with is a domain. And what is the domain here? Is the domain is a subtree of the domain namespace, right? The name of the domain is the domain name, and the node at the top, the name of the domain is the domain name of the node at the top of the subtree, right? So here, this figure shows some domains. Note that a domain may itself be divided into domains, or maybe subdomains as required, right? So .com, .edu are two separate domains, and these domains are again when it goes at the lower level, there could be another domain, subdomain, and so on. So in this way, the things are to be understood. And if you see the distribution of the namespace within that, so what it is like, the information contained in the domain namespace should be stored, and however it is very inefficient and also not reliable to have just one computer store such a huge amount of information, right? So it is inefficient because responding to requests from all over the world places a very heavy load on the system. So it is not reliable because any failure makes the data inaccessible. right? So resulting into several issues, right? So what is the hierarchy of the name servers, right? So we'll see that hierarchy of the name servers. The solution to this problem is to distribute the information among many computers called DNS servers, right? So there would be many servers, and understand the at the root level, no, there would be 13 uh, 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 I mean 13 machines which will be working as a root. So, and let's say India, if it wants to connect to the root, it will be somewhere in the Tokyo, and if it is not available, if that service is not available from the Tokyo, it will be connected to the Europe, and then if it is still not providing the services from the Europe station, then it will be passing the information to the US and so on. In that way, there would be, anyway, if the root is in failure, there would be other root servers which will take the control. So that is one thing. And under the root, no, there are various different types of servers, and those servers basically again are divided into various generic domains that we'll see later. But the solution, it is like the objective is to distribute the information among many computers called DNS server. And hierarchy of the server, no, what each server can be responsible. I mean, each server, we can say it is an authoritative server for either a large or small domain, right? So in other words, we can say that no, we have a hierarchy of servers in the same way that we have the hierarchy of names, right? So that is going to be there. And then what a server is responsible for or has authority over is called a zone, right? So what I said is what a server is responsible for or has authority over is called a zone. If the server accepts responsibility for a domain and does not divide the domain into smaller domain, the domain and the zone refers to the same thing, right? So the server makes the database, makes a database called a zone file and keeps all the information for every node under that domain. However, if a server divides its domain into subdomains and delegates part of its authority to other servers, domain and zone could be different, right? So the information about the nodes in the subdomains is stored in the servers at the lower level, with the original servers keeping some sort of references to these lower level servers. Of course, the original server does not free itself from the responsibility totally. It still has the zone, but the detailed information is kept by the lower level servers, right? And the server can also divide part of its domain and delegate responsibilities, but still keep part of the domain for itself, right? And in this case, what is going to happen is its zone is made of detailed information for the part of the domain that is not delegated and references to those parts that are delegated. So here there is a root server, as I told here. Root server is a server whose zone consists of the whole tree, right? And the root server usually does not store any information about the domains, but delegates its authority to the other servers, right? And keeping references to those servers. Currently, there are more than 13 root servers, each covering the whole domain namespace, right? And what I mean to say is the servers are distributed all over the world. Okay, and then there are primary and secondary servers which are there. So primary server basically is a server that loads a file about the zone for which it is an authority, and it is responsible for creating, maintaining, and updating the zone files. It stores the zone file on a local disk, right? And the secondary server is a server that transfers the complete information about a zone from another server, that is primary or secondary, and stores the file on its local disk. The secondary server neither creates nor updates the zone file. If updating is required, it must be done by the primary server, right? So which sends the updated version to the secondary. The primary, understand, the primary and secondary servers are both authoritative for the zones they serve. And idea is not to put the secondary server at a lower level of authority, but to create redundancy for the data, so that, you know, if one server fails, the other can continue serving clients. And note that again also that the server can be primary server for a specific zone and a secondary server for another zone. So server client, client server, client server, such type of, you know, both the roles could be played by the servers. So therefore, when we refer to the server as a primary or secondary server, we should be careful to which zone we actually refer, right? And when the primary downloads information from the secondary, normally we call it as zone transfer, right? So what it is all about in the DNS for the internet, what it has to offer to us is DNS is a protocol that can be used in different platforms. And in the internet, the domain name space, that is tree, is divided into three sections. One is generic section, generic domain, country domain, and the inverse domain. So let us see this these domains. And I mean, the DNS in the internet is basically divided into these three domains, right? So what is generic domain? Generic domain defines basically defines a registered host according to their behavior, generic behavior. So each node in the tree defines a domain which is an index to the domain namespace database, right? So these are some of the examples for the generic domain. Looking at the tree, we see that the first level is the generic domain section, allows 7 possible 3-character labels, right? These labels describe the organization type as listed in the subsequent table. So some of the this one is like commercial.com is for commercial organization, .edu for educational institution, .gov for government institutions, .int for international organizations, .mil for military groups, and .net for network support centers, and .org for non-profit organizations. And there are a few more which are aero, .aero, that is for airlines and aerospace companies. .biz is for business or firms, and .coop is a cooperative business organization. .info is for information service providers. .museum for museums and other non-profit organizations. .name for personal names, and .pro for professional individual organizations. So these are some of the generic names, and these are nothing but the authoritative servers, and at the end there will be some name which is given to the host, right? So, and that the host again has to be numbered, and entry for each this one has to be there inside the record, right? And this is what we have seen for different types of generic domains, right? Then there is a country domain. The country domain section follows the same format as the generic domain, but uses 2-character country abbreviations. So instead of having .com, now we are going to have .us for US, and .in for India, and so on, .fr for France, and so on, right? So this is country wise. If you want to search for the different entries for the different names, we can pass this information to the country domains and then search it out. And then the other possibility is the inverse domain. So inverse domain is used to map an address to a name. So earlier we understood that name to IP mapping is done, but in this case IP to name mapping is also the responsibility of the DNS, right? So to determine if the client is on the authorized list, it can ask its resolver to send a query to the DNS server and ask for the mapping of address to a name. Would be the basic responsibility which would be done by the inverse domain. So this type of query is called an inverse query or a pointer query. And to handle a pointer query, the inverse domain is added to the domain namespace with the first level node as called ARPA for historical reasons, and the second level is also one single node named inverse address, which is the meaning of that is inverse address, and the rest of the domain defines the IP address, right? So the if the IP address is 132.34.45.121, then this is nothing but the class B address with the net ID as 132.34. It what it will happen, it is read as 121.45.34.122.in-address.arpa. And this is the diagram which shows how the inverse mapping or the reading for the inverse domain configuration would be there, right? So next is so till now we have seen the namespace and the various ways in which the domain name system is present. I mean, these three domain names in the generic domain, country domain, and the inverse domain. Next is we were interested to see what is the different resolution which could be possible. And what is the meaning of resolution is mapping a name to an address, or an address to a name is called the name address resolution, right? So DNS, what is the role of a resolver, and what I mean. So DNS is designed as a client server application. So you understand it is a client server application, and a host that needs to map an address to a name or a name to an address calls a DNS client called a resolver, right? So resolver accesses the closest DNS server with a mapping request, and if the server has the information, it satisfies the resolver. Otherwise, it either refers the resolver to the other server or asks other servers to provide the information. So if the information is available, then it will provide. Otherwise, it will ask for the other resolvers and make sure that the information is available. So after the resolver receives the mapping, it interprets the response to see if it is the real resolution or an error, and finally delivers the results to the process that requested it, right? So it has the response has to come back to the actual host. So there are various ways in which the mapping could be done. So let us see mapping names to the addresses. So most of the time the resolver gives a domain name to the server and asks for the corresponding address. So in this case, the server checks the generic domain or the country domain to find the mapping, right? So if the domain name is from the generic domain section, the resolver receives the domain name such as CHEL, challenge.atc.fhda.edu. The query is sent to the resolver to the local DNS server for resolution, right? If the local server cannot resolve the query, it either refers the resolver to other servers or asks other servers directly. So in this way, it could be done. So if the domain name is from the country domain section, so one is your generic domain and there is a country domain. The resolver receives a domain request such as challenger.fhda.cu.ca.us. So California.us, right? The procedure is the same, right? So next is mapping. The other possibility is mapping addresses to the name. So client, in this case, what is going to happen is client sends an IP address to a server to be mapped to the domain name. Right. So address is sent and we need to map the domain name. So as mentioned before, this is a pointer type of query, and the answer queries of this kind, the DNS uses the inverse domain. However, if in the request, the IP address should be reversed, and two labels, in address and ARPA, should be appended to create a domain acceptable by the inverse domain section. So for example, like say in this, if the resolver receives the IP address 132.34.45.121, the resolver first inverts the address and then adds the two labels before sending. So domain name send is 121.45.34.132.inaddress.arpa. So which we have seen earlier in the previous diagram, which is received by the local DNS and then resolved. Right. So next is recursive resolution. So what do we mean by resolution, right? So recursive resolution means what? A client can ask for a recursive answer from the name server, right? And it is going to ask for the recursive answer from the name server. So normally what happens is it is going to make a request to the root, and then root will make a request to the authoritative server, and then authoritative server will make a request to the actual domain where the record is present with the corresponding name and IP address, right? And then it will reply back. So it is just going to make a request to only one, and reply will be coming back to the source if it is available with it. So this means that the resolver expects the server to supply the final answer. And if the server is the authoritative, and if the server is the authority for the domain name, it checks its database and responds, right? So if the server is not the authority, it sends the request to another server, the parent usually, right? And waits for the response. If the parent is the authority, it responds. Otherwise, again, it sends the query to yet another server. When the query is finally resolved, the response travels back until it finally reaches the requesting client. So if you see, the message will go till magro.com and then it returns from that place onwards, right? So until it finds the solution. So next is the other one is the iterative resolution. So iterative resolution is like if the client does not ask in the recursive manner, but recursive answer, but the mapping can be done iteratively. So like if the server is the authority for the name, it sends the answer. And if it is not, it returns the IP address of the server that it thinks can resolve the query. So let's say here fhda.edu, it replies that I'm not the answer. I mean, maybe edu can give you the right answer. Another server is referred with so it will make a request iteratively to the other server. So 3 and 4, and then again, if it is not there, it will make a request to 5 and 6, and then 7 and 8, and somewhere down 9 and 10, where the answer matches. Right. So I mean, it returns the IP address which it thinks that no can resolve the query. The client is responsible for, in this case, client is responsible for repeating the query for this second server, right? So if the newly addressed server can resolve the problem, it answers the query with the IP address. Otherwise, no, it will continue till the solution is not available. So these are the two ways in which no the mechanism is handled. One is iterative, another is recursive. And to optimize upon the performance, no, there is one more mechanism which is followed, which is known as caching. Right. So that is the caching. So every time, no, when a server receives a query for a name that it is not in its domain, it needs to search its database for the server IP address, right? And reduction of this search time would increase efficiency. So we want to reduce that, right? So we need to improve upon the efficiency. So DNS handles this with a mechanism called caching. So when a server asks for a mapping from another server and receives the response, it stores this information in its cache memory and before sending it to the client, right? So if the same or the another client asks for the same mapping, it can check its cache memory and resolve the problem, right? So however, to inform the client that the response is coming from the cache memory and not from the authoritative source, the server marks the response as unauthoritative. So also remember that no, the entry which is done inside the record, that is your name with the IP address, is always going to be valid for certain time, right? So there will be some time to live parameter also, which will be there. Maybe it could be 100 seconds, it could be 1 hour, 2 hours. So by that time, this entry will remain valid. And as and when this time is up and the timer matures, so that entry has to be purged from the table, and so that it will make space for the new fresh entries inside the table, right? So periodically, this is going to be done, and time to live counters also would be maintained for the entries which are actually purged due to TTL expiry, right? So there are this is what is there. So to improve on the performance, there is caching, and this is what we have seen. And then there is something like DNS messaging, DNS messages. So DNS has two types of messages, queries and response, and both type have the same format. The query message consists of a header and the question records, and the response message consists of the header and the question records, answer records, authoritative records, and additional records. This will be we are not going to see those things in detail, but yes, just understand that there are two types of messages. One is query and response, and these messages are lesser in size, so less than 512 bytes. So what we can say is that no, we can even use only UDP sort of protocol at the transport layer rather than the TCP. But whenever there is a zone transfer sort of thing, we can say that no, it is going to be, it will, I mean, it will, if the data size is bigger as compared to 512, then what it will do is it will cancel the UDP request connection, and the packet, and will establish a connection with the TCP, and then transfer the full data, that is zone transfer, will take place. So in that way, the things are encapsulated, and they are processed. One more thing is registers. So here, when a new entry is supposed to be done, then new website, if you're coming up, then how are new domain names added to the DNS? So this is done through a registrar and a commercial entity which is secreted by ICANN, controlling authority for namespace. So a registrar first verifies that the requested domain name is unique and is it available or not, and then enters it into the database, right? Its database. And for that, you will be charged to pay something for that. Maybe for 1 year there would be some amount, for 2 years it will be having some amount, and for a lifetime as such there could be some different amount. So this is what is there with the register sort of thing. Then there is a dynamic domain name system. What is that is the DNS master file must be updated dynamically, and dynamic domain name system therefore was devised to respond to this need. And in DDNS, when the binding between the name and an address is determined, the information is sent usually by DHCP to a primary DNS server. Primary server updates the zone, and the secondary servers are notified either actively or passively. So these are some of the things to be understood for DDNS. And as said earlier, then DNS can use either UDP or TCP. In both cases, the well-known port used by the server is port 53. Right. So UDP is used when the size of the response message is less than 512 bytes, because most UDP packages have a 512 bytes packet size, and if the size of the response message is more than 512 bytes, the TCP connection would be used. So in this way, we can say that DNS it can use both the TCP as well as UDP, and on the well-known port number 53. So this is all about the DNS. Please go through this video a couple of times so that it becomes easy for you to understand.